We've taken what we can measure and what we can quantify, and we've prioritized it at the expense of what we can't. Our present expression of humanity is a direct result of the environment we've built for us to live in. You know, big problem that we had in our relationship was that my response to our childhood was to become a raging alcoholic for about 20 years. Get a therapy dog for the students, which is something I think Matt would have just absolutely loved. And hopefully other people don't have to lose their brother or their sister or their mother or their father or their friend. Here we are, another day. We're right now at the summit of Pass Mountain, highest point, the Usury Mountains, right meow, officially. Take a little 360 spin here. Pretty fantastic views. Obviously I've done videos from up here before, but I figured, given the time of year it is, and how beautiful the weather here in Arizona is this time of year, that this would be a good trail to get a little solitude so I could talk about my brother Matt, because that's what I wanted to do today. Now, I am way out of practice hiking and definitely feeling creaky. My knees have not been the same since the 50K. So we'll see how I do on this particular hike that involves a decent amount of scrambling. But what I wanted to talk about with Matt was that, I guess in particular what I wanted to start with was masking. Now, I don't think he was the greatest at it, but he was very insistent that he was fine and that he didn't need any help. Maybe this is not a good spot for this mic if I'm gonna hit it with my chin. Hopefully that's not too bad. This is my first time using this microphone, so we'll see. Hopefully it is better than what it would be without. But anyway, he was insistent that he didn't need help and that he was fine. And I always knew that wasn't the case because of my personal history. Not to say that we were overly similar. I mean, that was one of the most common things that people said about us when we were growing up was, I'm gonna move this because I think that is just gonna be irritating to listen to. Of course, now I can't get it off of my shirt here. Okay. Sorry, this is gonna be bad here. There. Hopefully that'll be fine and hopefully that'll stick around and hopefully that's not too unpleasant because I'm just gonna keep this as a one-cut stream of consciousness video, which it's already way too rambly for anybody to want to pay attention to. But masking and, you know, not letting people in on what you're actually thinking and feeling. Now we all do this, right? We all conceal the true nature of our emotions and our thoughts. And we do this for a number of reasons, you know, and I'm not saying that they're all bad, right? There's a time and a place where, you know, playing your cards a little close to the vest isn't a bad idea. Stoicism has its place, right? But, you know, when there's people that care about you, the people that are closest to you, when you can't even let them in, then there's a problem. And I guess what with my brother in particular, and his story is obviously unique to him, but it's going to have similarities to other stories that other people have. But he was always a pretty shy kid, shy guy, you know. He loved reading. Everywhere he went, he had several books, and I'm talking like legitimate hundreds of pages, maybe even 1,000 pages. Mostly these fantasy novels, you know, like wizards and dragons and all that stuff, which is never my speed. But anyway, my point being, his shyness is what kind of allowed him to be so insistent with his masking as an adult. I knew that was a bad place to put my foot. His masking later as an adult, and then, oh, looks like I broke that. And it made it easier for me and the rest of the family to sort of believe that. Man, I am just, okay, so this is about the most ridiculous attempt at recording that one could imagine. Good googly moogly. Let me think about this here. I don't know if that'll be any better, maybe, and then my sunglasses won't hit it. Well, so much for, I guess, a stream of consciousness solo cut. I don't know, maybe I should just restart this recording. I wanted to get a single shot of this little ridge line because it's one of my favorite hikes. And I just think it's a cool view, a cool video to watch back. But anyway, talking about masks, we're talking about my brother and his masks and how he was shy as a kid. And then, you know, shortly after college, which he didn't finish, which was, I mean, if you knew my brother, you knew he was easily the smartest person you've ever met. And he did phenomenal in high school, you know, with AP classes and all that stuff. But college, things got difficult for him, and he ended up having to drop out. Well, from that point on, he then was able to find a partner who enabled him to isolate from the world. He didn't need to get a job. He didn't need to, you know, leave the house to do certain things that he didn't want to do. And he kept his family at arm's length. Now, I live 2,000 miles away. I wasn't gonna be hopping on a plane that often to go see him because I've made a mess of my life most of my life, so I don't really have the money to be hopping on planes all the time. And so instead of, you know, regular phone calls, it was irregular text messages, because that was the only thing that he would do. You know, I could call him, I could leave a message, but he wasn't gonna return it. And if I shot a text message out to him, it probably was gonna take a day or two, but I'd at least get a response. And so Man, I really hope the audio is not just awful. It's like, what's the point of using a microphone? Anyway, I just need to figure out how to use it correctly, I guess. But so that's how it was. And it's one of my biggest frustrations in this, this should, would, could games of torture that I keep finding myself playing is I should have tried harder to connect with him because I saw through his mask. I knew, despite what he was saying, no happy, healthy person stays in their house all the time, doesn't interact with people face to face, doesn't run errands, all of these things. I know that a happy, healthy person does not do that. A happy, healthy person engages in the world. My brother was definitely not engaging in the world. Now, big problem that we had in our relationship was that my response to our childhood was to become a raging alcoholic for about 20 years. And over the course of that time, I damaged the relationship more and more. And there was a particular night where he was in a situation and he needed my help. And I didn't help him. And I'm pretty sure that was the situation, that was the moment that broke the camel's back, where he decided that he couldn't rely on his big brother to be there when he needed him. And from that point on, I think he told himself he didn't need me. And I think he said that he didn't need my dad and he didn't need my mom. But he did. Let's try this one more time here. Okay, we'll try this. He obviously did need us. He obviously wasn't okay because he took his own life. And if he was okay, he wouldn't have. And it's so frustrating because I've had my struggles with depression my whole life. He's witnessed them. But his situation, there was a catalyst that I didn't share, that I haven't experienced. I've experienced a lesser degree. I'll just come out and say it. His spouse of 14 years began cheating on him. He tried to be okay with an open marriage, but he ultimately decided he couldn't. And when he expressed that, his partner of 14 years ended things via text message, like a despicable, garbage human being. And I'll try to not waste too much time focusing on negatives. Focusing on hate. But that individual is thankfully going to destroy their own life and put themselves in an even bigger hell than they have any idea. Because this individual isn't very bright and is also highly emotional and emotionally reactive and emotionally unstable and a drunk. So I'm done saying that. I got that piece out. Again, this is stream of consciousness. Just kind of sharing my grief, and that's a part of it. But on a brighter note, Matt loved animals. He had a couple of dogs that he really, really loved. And his high school class has been raising some funds and trying to figure out what they can do in his honor with those funds. And maybe I should put this in here. And what's cool is that one of the ideas is to get a therapy dog for the students, which is something I think Matt would have just absolutely loved if they would have had that back when he was in high school, because high school for him wasn't the best, you know. He was the smart kid with glasses in band and orchestra. He let bullies get a reaction out of him. So they bullied him. And I did what I could when we were younger. I mean, I definitely had the mentality that the only one who could pick on my little brother was me. And I certainly wasn't as kind and as nice to him as possible. That's because I had my own stupid, child status games I was playing. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to play sports. I wanted to do all these things. And, the nerdy little brother was cramping my style, which is just I have to forgive myself for that, because that's certainly not unique to me. I'm not the only big brother who's been like that to their little brother. But it just frustrates me, because if I would have been a better brother, if I would have made sure that we were closer, then maybe he would have confided in me. And maybe when things got so dark for him, he would have reached out instead of enacting a plan that nobody could stop. But he did. And I can't go back in time. And I can't change anything like that. But what I can do is I can try to share his story and some kind of a message. And then hopefully other people don't have to lose their brother or their sister or their mother or their father or their friend. Because suicide is going up, especially when you include overdoses. This world is not, it is not a sunshiny, happy place. It is bleak. And we can kid ourselves and we can pretend that it's not. But if it wasn't, people wouldn't be trying to get out of here sooner than they need to. But that's the thing, right? We all, as political, and I'm obviously speaking about America in particular here, the West, I guess, in general, but obviously things have gotten so hyper politicized. It's really, they've just been tribalized. That's what they've played into. And as a result of that, we've lost complete touch with reality. And the reality is that all of us, more or less, want the same thing. We want to be safe. We want to have a standard of living that improves with each generation. You know, we want our kids to have a better life than we did. We want the freedom to pursue our passions and our interests. We want a just and fair world. But there's forces that funnel us into these confused ideologies where we think that the other tribe is hell-bent on nothing less than the absolute destruction of everything we hold dear. And that's obviously not true. You know, the more time you spend talking to people in real life, the more you know this is true, what I'm saying, and that it's false, that we're really all at each other's throats. Yeah, some of us have some pretty warped ideas at present, but by and large, people are good. What I always think back to, and I think it was it Hegel who, or Hobbes, I want to say it's Hobbes, who essentially asserts that like at our base form, we're just vicious, violent animals. That's what humans are, he thinks. But I disagree. And I mean, other philosophers have disagreed too, not to dub myself a philosopher, but what I believe is our present expression of humanity is a direct result of the environment we've built for us to live in. And the environment that we've built for ourselves is inherently anti-actualized, our actualized selves. It's the antithesis of that. And what I mean by this is because in this life, in this world, in this reality, we have seen and unseen. We have objective and subjective. We have chaos and order. And what we've done over time as a species, collectively, as we've brick by brick put together this world, is we've done so at the behest of the objective. We've taken what we can measure and what we can quantify, and we've prioritized it at the expense of what we can't. We can put a number on your bank account, the number of jobs created, the number of bombs dropped. All of these things we can measure. But you can't measure peace of mind. You can't measure purpose, fulfillment. And these things, these subjective qualities, are arguably even more important. And I say the evidence for their importance is based on the fact that according to objective metrics, literacy rates, access to clean water, education, you name it, crime, all of this stuff, it has all improved. Yet, we have never had more people unhappy with existence itself. How can that be the case unless what I'm saying is at least somewhat true? So how do we, and this is again, rambly stream of consciousness, but this is just, it's something I've been thinking about as I try to come up with how I can help this cause. Because the reality is everything is interconnected. You know, if you want to focus on mental health, you can't do it without talking about economics. You can't do it without talking about crime. You can't do it without talking about geopolitics. Everything is connected to everything. Now, we can get lost in this interconnection. It's a cool spot. We can get lost in this interconnection and sort of get paralyzed, unable to take action, remaining unfocused, etc. And that's why I think the prescription, the solution to everything, every single problem, is to work on ourselves as individuals. If I am the best version of me, and I become strong enough to not only endure the tragedy and malady of my own life, but to help shoulder the burden for others, and you do the same thing, and everyone else follows suit, what kind of world do we end up having? Do we have a world where people no longer want to live? Where they throw in the towel? I don't think we do. I think a big problem that we have in this society is we have just this completely backwards understanding about what the purpose of this existence is and how we go about achieving it. We get told these lies. The most pernicious and I think persistent lie of modern times is that the pursuit of happiness is paramount. Your happiness matters above all else, and that the way you achieve happiness is by running from discomfort. The problem is, if you live in this way, you'll quickly find yourself very uncomfortable and seldom happy. Because happiness is not meant to be a static state. Happiness, from my perspective, is simply a transitory state. It's a disappearing carrot, if you will. It's what you get after working hard to achieve. And then, because of our natural biology that we evolved, and this just makes sense, once you achieve, you now have set a new baseline, and you want more. And this, okay, I think it's still recording. Only got a 30-second timer, or a 30-minute timer. But it's not to say that we're any more important per se, but our actions obviously have a greater impact on the whole trajectory of this thing, this rock that's hurling through space. So, what does all this have to do with anything? To tie it back, it has to do with those masks. And I had said initially that these masks that we use to conceal our thoughts and emotions aren't inherently maladaptive, or they're not bad all the time, right? But what I will also say is that most of the time they are. We are way too disconnected from each other in real life. And the reason that we keep falling into this is because we have this technological lie that we can digitally connect, and that's somehow going to be the same thing. But it's not. You know, going back to my brother, one of his issues that he had, he wasn't just mainly a text communicator with me and my parents, but it was with his partner who, you know, would, for their work, there would be away for chunks of time. And what I believe ended up happening is my brother, despite the length of their marriage, became too similar to one of this person's online friends who they communicate with. And because of this, you know, the particular online friend, for whatever reason, happened to be better at tripping those digital, you know, neurochemical buttons. And, you know, go figure, after a very short period of time, my brother's spouse thought they found their soulmate. Theoretically, my brother was their soulmate. That's why they got married. But apparently this individual they knew for a short period of time was. And I think in large part, it had to do with that disconnection. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is these masks are something that we should actively work on not wearing. We should, you know, when someone asks you how you're doing, don't just respond good or fine or whatever your default programmed response is. Try to say something different, something a little bit unique, maybe something original and in the moment. Now that may be uncomfortable, and maybe, you know, the people that are in your life aren't necessarily going to respond the best to that. It's okay. Maybe they will in the future, or maybe they won't. But I don't think you're doing it for them. This is always so much more awkward when I'm holding a camera. You're doing it for you. Because the truth is that we're ultimately going to need other people to be there for us in this life. It is 100% unavoidable that we will face, again, tragedy and malady. It's built into the human experience. Bad things happen for no good reason. And then bad things happen because people choose to do them. Some of us are going to experience more of this than others. A lot of people, in fact, one of the cruel truths of this life is a lot of the least likable people have gone through the most tragedy and malady. And that's why they grew into an unlikable person is because of a bunch of maladaptive traits as a result of that trauma, for lack of a better word. You know, it's common for children that are abused to become addicts, to be in and out of jail, engage in criminal behaviors, all of this stuff. Now, I'm not trying to say that no individual has agency. But what I do believe is in the battle of free will versus determinism, I don't think that free will is a given. I think until we reach a certain level of awareness, it is just determinism. We are just operating based on the things that happen to us that sort of tip the first domino over. And it's so tricky to try to figure out what it is for any one individual that's going to take them out of that space and put them into or onto the path towards actualization. Because fundamentally, if we want to live in the type of world that we all want to live in, we need everyone to be on the path of growth and not on the path of stagnation or decay. And unfortunately, a lot of us are on that path. And I'm not even blaming the individuals that are on that path because, of course, I was on that path at one point and I, may dip my toe in being less than my actualized self from time to time. And the reality is, the path towards actualization is ugly. I was recently reminded of something that I think explains this pretty well. And so, essentially what I'm saying is I needed to be a miserable drunk in order to have the perspective I have now. I needed to spend years living off of savings, never leaving my room, slowly starving myself to death in order to finally figure out how to fight mental health and suicidal depression. Just like a baby needs to fall in order to learn to walk, because it's the act of picking themselves back up that strengthens the leg muscles enough so that they can walk. And it's in this way that we grow. Now, I didn't get to have these types of conversations with my brother. He wasn't interested in talking, period. And again, he was adamant that he was fine, and that he didn't need any help, and there was nothing wrong with his life. And I'm not even trying to say there was something wrong, quote unquote, with his life. But what I knew was he wasn't fulfilled, he wasn't enjoying it, he wasn't living with purpose. And if everyone else on the planet lived the way he was living, the planet would cease to exist in no time flat. So again, I hope there's someone listening to this that gets anything out of it. Because I am so gonna take a break. Holy cow. Because losing my brother to suicide is the shittiest thing that's ever fucking happened to me. And I don't want it to happen to anybody else. It's going to, obviously. I'm one man. There's only so much I'm ever going to be able to do. And in my current state of existence, there's very little I can do. I can make these videos to this channel with all 91 of you awesome people that have subscribed, but it's only 91 of you. We all ultimately have to take the time to clean our back porch, because that's the only way that we clean up the world. It's never going to be one person. I'm not even talking about me. I'm just saying in general. You know, pick your favorite, world changer. It's never going to be one person that does it. The world is always going to be a reflection of our collective actions. So the key is to make sure that our collective actions total up to the beautiful world that we want to live in. So, because I'm just going to keep recording, and we'll just see how a video like this does, where I just talk for however long I end up talking for. But the way that I plan to try and start impacting the world for good a little more directly and a little more intentionally is to start a 501c3 charitable organization. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I haven't fully, kind of articulated some of my thoughts. And I'm still figuring things out. I don't have a name or anything like that, but the main thought that I have is, what are the things that me and my family have found lacking as we've lost Matthew? And I'm taking the weirdest way to get down this. One of the big things that I've realized is there is just not a lot of support. I live in the Phoenix metro area, and you would think in an area that big, and with suicide being so common, that there would be support groups all the time that you could get to, but there's not. There are 2 groups that I can get to with a half-hour drive or less. Now, to be grateful, that does give me 1 group a week, and it is better than nothing. My main issue, my main problem, and what I hope to ideally solve is that, in my experience with groups of a different kind, recovery-related groups, you want to go to several to try to find the people that you click with. And with only 2 different groups that I each meet twice a month, it's unlikely I'm going to really run into a whole lot of new people. Now, I would say that's a good thing, because then that could imply that people haven't experienced suicide, but what the reality is a lot of people don't get help after that for a number of reasons, or they get the wrong kind of help, or they self-medicate or something like this. It's tricky to know what to do after a suicide, because there's so many compounding factors that you don't even think of when this hasn't happened to you. You know, your relationship to the individual. What, did they leave a note? Were you mentioned in the note? Did you find them? How did they go about it? What was their method? You know, a bunch more too. All of this stuff just complicates the pain and the grief. And if you don't have people to talk to that have experienced it, good luck. Because I can tell you from my experience, unless you've experienced it, you just don't know what to say. And that's fine. I get it. There's so many people that that meant well and have accidentally said something just completely idiotic. And I mean, there's other people that have said, you know, really wonderful, nice things and blah, blah, blah. But by and large, most people just don't know what to say. And this can kind of leave you feeling pretty alienated. I already feel pretty alienated in this life because of the path I've chosen to walk. As I put things back together, is one of solitude. And I don't, like when I say I literally have no friends within 2,000 miles, I mean I literally have no friends within 2,000 miles. Now, I may or may not have mentioned this, but my brother's death has made me realize that I certainly can't continue this. I'm not an island, and I need to add people into my life, just like we all need people in our lives because we're social creatures. That's what human beings are. I mean, the whole reason, or one of the theories, how we were able to beat Neanderthal, who, for various reasons, was a more capable hominid than we are. Or excuse me, hominid is the wrong word, but a more capable pre-human than we are. But they were limited in the size of the groups that they could organize. I want to say it was like 50, whereas we could organize in much larger groups. And because we could organize in larger groups, we beat them. And the reality is a lot of our brain that we think is for various other purposes, it's really just an aspect of sociability or social skills that it's actually for. And I bring this up because, again, in modern life, man, I am so out of shape. In modern life, we delude ourselves into thinking that digital connection is the same thing as face-to-face connection. Now, I mean, there's something to be said about, you know, like a Zoom call, somebody talking, looking you in the eye, that type of thing. That has, you know, some power. That's a step above reading a tweet, for example. But, you know, it's estimated 97% of communication is nonverbal. So how much are you losing when you're not literally around somebody? Because the reality is, too, is we give off various pheromones and hormone production, different neurotransmitters, all sorts of different chemistry is taking place when we sit across from each other and we have a conversation. You know, really, I mean, it's, unless we increase that level of connectivity, we're never going to end the despair. Because that's where despair ultimately comes from. It's from being alone. I mean, I can't say this for certain because this was never, my brother never told me this, but what I believe is his thought pattern, his line of thought went something along the lines of, my spouse of 14 years has thrown away our marriage. I will never find somebody else. What's the point? I'm done. And that is despair. That is not having enough human connection. You know, if my brother had some good friends that he could confide in, if me and him had a closer relationship and he could confide in me or my parents more so, if he had more people that he could talk to, maybe he would have had enough of a sliver of hope that things could get better. But he didn't. And a lot of people feel the same way. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but the amount of people that report having one or fewer close friends is higher than ever, in particular with men. Well, I certainly fit that statistic. I think I weirded out my childhood buddy who helped me out tremendously. Serendipitously was in town 2,000 miles away from his home when my brother took his life, so he was able to spend the day with me and my mom, who lives 45 minutes from me. And he was, tremendous when I flew back home for my brother's funeral. Anyway, I had referred to him as my best friend, and I think that threw him off. But because me and him don't talk all that often, we certainly don't see each other all that often, because again, I live 2,000 miles away. But I'm not alone in not having a social life. It was one of the reasons why my brother didn't have, it's a line of defense, if you will, for the bad things in life that are inevitably going to happen. Is have good friends, support network around you. You've got to work. You've got to take the time. You've got to really grow and build that. And I can tell you, I know it is difficult. I am so antisocial. I get really uncomfortable around people. I can say that on camera now, but I'm shy. I don't like opening up. I need outgoing people to kind of pull me out of my shell. And I didn't used to be this way. But I feel it even more now without Matt, because obviously that's, in my mind, the most important thing, significant thing that's ever happened in my life. And anyone who meets me, it's like, well, this is the most significant thing that you could know about me, which immediately makes things awkward and weird and uncomfortable for somebody who just met you. So anyway, I haven't been interacting with people. I haven't been interacting with people before this happened, but now I have the understanding that I need to, and I'm really struggling with it. So that'll be part of what gets documented, I guess, because I got to practice what I preach. And none of us make it through this life alone. We all need people. So I can't try to kid myself that I can do it alone. This has been, I guess, a pretty long rant and a ramble, and I'm about to hit the section of trail where I'll probably run into some people. So I think we'll kind of close it out there. Just do me a favor. Reach out to somebody in your life. Even if it's just a text or a quick phone call, a message on social media, whatever the case may be. And just make it genuine so they know that you're thinking of them and that you care. Because you never know what's going on in their head. what mask they might be showing you that you just haven't picked up on. So anyway, I appreciate you always. Hit that like and share and all that good stuff. We'll see you next time. Peace.